To get settled in.
It's only 6:30.
Barney is here, that's good.
Hazel, just let me know when you're ready, okay? And we'll get started.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Good evening and welcome to the December 7th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a full agenda this evening. Before I get started, I will, this is a hybrid meeting, which allows for Zoom participation. And I will read the governor's order into the record. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location listed above, and it is possible that any or all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. The meeting may also be accessed remotely via Zoom by using the link https://zoom.us/i/99906910000 $PWD equals, is it really necessary to read the whole link?
No, don't read the link. I wouldn't read the link.
$6Z&E5ZFCRUGU1E IU3QVK
I wouldn't read it.
5MX FKDZ09, and some of those are caps and some of those are lowercase, so I think you really needed to be prepared if you wanted to do Zoom. Hopefully, anyone on Zoom was able to use that link. Anyway, members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us when required by law or allowed by the chair. Persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely, as noted above. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191, or live streamed online at westboroughtv.org. In the event that we are unable to do so, but despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, I'm going to read the agenda first, just so everyone has an idea. and then we'll get started. We have a discussion regarding Master Plan Implementation Committee with Donnie Goris-Kolb from VHB. We have a continued public hearing for the 400 Freiburg Parkway Site Plan Review. We have a continued public hearing for site plan review at 165 Flanders. We have a discussion on the Town Planner Reporting Authority and a discussion on the Trans-Oriented Village affordable housing requirements as related to Chapter 40A, Section 3, new state regulations. We have a continued public hearing for an amendment to Special Permit TOV 2014-1, Village Commons, 1 Gleason Street. Discussion on water line and completion of landscaping for units being occupied over the winter. We have an update on Zara Gardens incomplete items and a discussion and possible vote of support for the Community Preservation Act. So since it's a full agenda, we'll jump right into it with a discussion on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Jim Robbins, I'll ask you to introduce this, and then we'll move forward from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, at your last meeting, you had requested, actually in 2 meetings prior, you had requested that we provide some input from other communities as to what they are using for their form of implementation guidance. Since we adopted the master plan in early October, we have embarked on putting together our format for implementation of the goals of the plan. I've asked Donnie Goris-Kolb from VHB, who put together our master plan, to come and speak to us as to what kind of consulting services are provided by VHB and master plan consultants in general, and what his experience has been in Northborough as they are currently implementing the Northborough master plan. So Donnie is here with us this evening remotely. He'll appear on the screen behind us shortly. And I've asked Donnie to speak to us. You know him well as he put together our master plan. So Donnie, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Donnie. It's your nickel.
Yeah, I hear an echo on my side too. It's a pleasure to be back and in front of the planning board again. Jim just summarized. He asked me to come and present on my experience with respect to consultants and a consultant role on an implementation committee. And a consultant in this role would typically set up and help set up the foundation for committee success by working with the committee to establish structure, standard processes, and talk through tools and maybe create and develop tools. What I've included in scopes related to this is the facilitation of the first couple of meetings before really empowering and handing it off to the chairperson of that committee. And to provide a little bit more insight on that, the first meeting's agenda typically falls around, confirming the committee's mission, having the committee and the committee members understand their role and their responsibilities, providing an update on the master plan and its recommended actions, reviewing the implementation matrix. So there needs to be a mechanism by which the implementation committee can track the actualization or the implementation of actions, whether or not they've been completed to date. A couple of the actions from the master plan were already completed or in the process of being completed by the time the master plan was adopted. So just checking those off, and then moving forward, using that matrix to track and monitor and report on the status of the implementation of the other actions within the master plan. We attend, or a consultant in this role would attend as many meetings as necessary, but the intent is really to empower the committee to be self-sufficient in the long term. So it's not really designed to have a consultant be a permanent fixture on the committee. List of invitees to their meetings. In addition to those meetings, what we may do, or what a consultant may do, and what we have done with Northborough, is start to undertake planning and research activities related to the actions that they want to prioritize and those actions that they want to start implementing. And that might be, what are the connected actions? What can we streamline as part of the implementation of this particular action? What is necessary in order to implement that, that action? Are there other actions within the master plan that are, that need to precede that action, or are there other actions not listed in the master plan that need to be implemented or covered in some way or fashion. Some of the key, steps as part of implementation, aside from connected actions, what does the town need to do? Who does the town need to speak to? What approvals do they need to get in order for this particular action to get implemented? Additionally, what other applicable regulatory and policy related considerations, and what are the potential funding sources? Some of this work, manifests itself in case studies and white papers, things of that nature. And we usually limit that to a number of, research and planning activities. Really to give, again, show them the way in terms of how to think about implementation and how to start planning for implementation at the action level. Again, this is all intended to really kickstart the implementation process and empower the committee moving forward. So, it's the hope is that we're streamlining the process of getting members that may not be fully up to speed with the master plan, because, the master plan implementation committee may not be the same members or have the same membership as the advisory committee. So there may be folks on the implementation committee that are not fully up to speed. And, we just kind of streamline that. And we also reduce some of the initial workload of the committee by just making it a little bit more efficient, giving you the tools and giving you the processes and giving you, the structure by which, you can, sort of take that implementation jet off that runway, if that makes sense.
Great. All right. I think we should turn to the board for questions about the committee and what our next steps are. Anybody have questions? Tim, you want to go ahead?
Sure, I'll start. Hi, Donnie. This is Tim Kaler. Just going up a level, I'm kind of curious about the kind of scope and deliverables of an implementation committee. And just by way of context, I think the master plan sets out a number of priorities, and that, reading through it, there are a number of calls to action, if you will, that would involve multiple departments within the municipal government or other committees. So, whereas, some initiatives, you'd say an implementation committee, well, they're going to implement what the plan lays out, when really, the master plan is many, many years, and it's meant as a guide for, the actual structure of town government and the departments that run town government. So I'm really curious what the deliverables are, and I guess I'm speaking to you guys as experts knowing the critical success factors, but what should be the composition? Does it have a sunset or an end of life once, it's felt to be self-sufficient? So I just appreciate some comments on scope and charter, as we look to how to even staff it and what we would be looking to drive.
Right. So as you mentioned, the committee is going to be a standing committee. It's something that is a living committee. The membership will, naturally evolve as the committee moves forward and advances and actions are implemented. But in terms of the deliverables, it's important to note that the implementation committee may not be the committee or the entity that is actually implementing the actions. As you correctly noted, there are a lot of different organizations or in the master plan, the implementation plan listed implementation leaders and implementation partners. So it's important to note that those are the folks, and you correctly, call that out, are the ones that are going to be implementing. The implementation committee, their primary charge is to track, monitor, and poke those and work with those that are going to be implementing the actions. So the deliverables, in my opinion, and in my experience, are really that implementation tracking matrix that is kept up to date. Coordination with the individual implementation leaders, and just reporting to a board of selectmen or the select board in your case, the planning board perhaps, the community at large, on what the status is of the implementation of the master plan. So at a high level, those are the big deliverables of the implementation committee. Now some implementation committees do take the charge of implementing certain actions. So there would be deliverables tied to that. You know, an implementation committee can form a subcommittee that is based, moving forward with a reuse plan for a particular facility, for example, and they would have their own deliverables. So it's really up to that. You know, I alluded to that structure and that mission and that charge. That needs to be established up front, and that's something that evolves. But at a high level, their deliverables are really that reporting and that tracking and making sure that the community is aware and kept abreast of, the status of the master plan, because it really is supposed to be that living document. And if it's, if it is a living document, then it needs to be, managed and, again, tracked and reported.
Okay, that's good. So an oversight in many ways, and tracking function, unless it adopts an expanded role. And I think you answered it also. It sort of goes on in perpetuity. It doesn't have necessarily a sunset date.
Yeah, unless all the actions are implemented, then it's been quite successful. But they may also be charged with updating the master plan as well. So,
okay, thank you.
So Donnie, who do you suggest to be on this board, and how big does it make sense a board be to actually make actions move forward without being halted?
No, I've seen it similar to steering or advisory committees. I've seen it, sort of run the gamut. So there is I've seen committee or communities put out a bid, or not a bid, but a solicitation for participation. Those that were part of the advisory committee, they're usually encouraged to continue their participation in the implementation committee because they know the process, they know the master plan best. But it's always recommended that a diverse set of stakeholders being not just the public, but others that have a stake in the the success of the community. That could include department representatives. It could include members of the public. It could include members of certain community organizations that are within the community. I think that taking a look at the actions and taking a look at the mix of implementation leaders and implementation partners may give you a clue as to who might be best suited for that role. For example, in Northborough, they have a representative from the select board. They have representatives from the planning board. Not too many folks from a departmental or staff standpoint. More folks from the community itself and the community organization and representatives of the community organization, the historical commission. So it's a little similar to the makeup of the advisory committee, but really I think it would be beneficial to take a look at the mix of implementation partners and leaders, and in addition to getting some new faces from the community participating. I think that would be most beneficial to the membership of the implementation committee for Westborough.
Donnie, could you provide us what Northborough's structure looks like? Or send Jim an email.
Yep. I can do that, but at a high level, they have a chairperson and an assistant chairperson, and they've only had a few meetings thus far. But I can give you an example of what they're looking at. They are looking at creating a downtown vision plan. So what we're helping out with now is just putting together a scope of work to really help them define what that vision plan should contain and should look like. So that wasn't what you asked for, but mentioning Northborough and their structure and what they're moving forward with, I think is also beneficial context or helpful context for you.
Yes, thank you, Donnie.
Hazel, go ahead.
Donnie, Hazel, hi.
Hi, Hazel.
Do you visualize the committee giving interim reports, for example, at town meetings, and that's something that the consultant would help with? I mean, I think in order to keep the committee on track and the town on track on the master plan, I would think, since we generally have a regular town meeting and then a fall follow-up, that it might be appropriate for the committee to give reports to both of those town meetings, just to make sure the town's aware of what's going on and to keep the committee on track.
Yep, there's a bit of accountability in there, Hazel, and there's a bit of transparency as well. So raising awareness of the community of the master plan and the implementation of the master plan is going to, promote additional buy-in, and having that continuous reporting, either at town meeting or through annual reports, creates that accountability for the implementation plan, along with the implementation leaders, and the transparency is there and builds trust in public government, which I think is part of your. One of the principles, I believe, if it was a principle, it might have been a goal or an objective of your strategic plan that was created back in 2018, I believe.
Thank you.
Jim, Robbins, do you have any questions for Don?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Donnie again. Does the consultant get involved at all in helping the committee to mediate its priorities? So, for example, there are medium, short, and long-range goals in the plan, and there are some that rise to the level of highest importance. If the committee disagrees on what the action should be, say initially or in year one, does the consultant help them mediate and prioritize those high priorities?
Yeah, I think to an extent, the consultant shouldn't be dictating what the priorities are, but I think the word mediate is the right word to use, because what we want to have the implementation committee do is fully understand the breadth of the recommendations of the master plan. Now, the master plan already includes priorities, and it includes timeline, but this is a living document, so the consultant needs to make sure that the committee is aware of any changing context and dynamics that may increase the priority of certain recommendations or actions over others. They need to look through the priorities of the implementation committee and just again add that context. For example, the state is looking at updating its MVP planning process. So with a new planning grant or a new planning program moving forward, you may have an opportunity to advance some of the climate resilience actions that you have planned for. But that's just one example that changing regulatory and policy environments is part of what I think a consultant could provide in this case to help inform the priorities and help inform the priorities. In addition, what we want to do is just make, again, I mentioned synthesizing and streamlining, the understanding of the master plan, and part of that is presenting what actions were priorities and what actions were short-term, and let's review them, and let's, as a group, figure out which ones we should be tackling first, because as you mentioned, there were a lot of high priority actions. So which high priority action do you want to move forward with? And that's part of the facilitation of that first couple of meetings.
Thank you. Another question. You mentioned early on in your introduction that funding sources could be provided. Does the consultant help direct the town and the implementation committee to the appropriate funding sources for particular goals and objectives?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, it truly depends on the scope, but part of the early action implementation support is identifying what that action is and where the town could obtain that funding. So we would do the research, or the consultant would do the research and help inform. To help inform, one, it could be to help inform the priority setting, or two, to help inform just the implementation of that action that has already been deemed a priority for short-term implementation. And depending on the scope, the research and planning activities, that could include help with writing a grant, for example, if that help is indeed needed.
All right, I think you've answered most of my questions. I know we're going to have the Northborough Town Planner in at our next meeting to discuss her experience with implementation.
Yes.
Are we ready to move on to the next agenda item?
Yes. Thank you, Donnie. Again, thank you very much for all your help and a job well done with our master plan.
All right, Donnie, thank you so much for
thank you.
coming in.
Thanks,
Look
Donnie.
forward to
Good
working with you in the future.
Bye-bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, so let's continue. The next agenda item is a continued public hearing for 400 Freiburg Parkway site plan review. Do we have representatives from the applicant here? If you want to, do you want to come up? You're welcome. I don't know that there's enough chairs, but bring an extra chair up. And if you could just identify yourselves for the record, and then we can move forward with this.
Sure,
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Tim Twardowski. I'm an attorney with Robinson and Cole, representing the applicant Verizon Wireless.
Mike Scott from Land Design Collaborative.
John Soper with Verizon.
Jim Robbins, where are we on this? This is a continuation.
Yeah, so as you know, the planning board continued the public hearing at its last meeting to this evening. It had been continued several times prior to that at the request of the applicant. The plans have been reviewed by town staff. Comments have been submitted to Mike, the project engineer. He's had an opportunity to review them. I know that changes will be incorporated to the plan where necessary. The outstanding item, as you know, was the town had asked the applicant Verizon to please address the town's request to how they could assist the town in meeting some of its infrastructure needs in the area. Verizon, through Robinson Cole, had sent a letter to the planning board dated November 19th and offered a couple of forms of mitigation, and I assume that the board has had an opportunity to read that, and that would be the topic of discussion this evening. I think there are no other outstanding issues.
Okay, any questions from the board? It's been a while since we saw the presentation.
Questions about this?
I don't have any questions. Pete? No. Okay. Any questions from the public? All right. Are we at the point where you feel ready to draft a decision on this, or do we
Yes,
have a draft?
but I think you want to discuss the response from
Just trying to
Verizon.
pull that up while we talk, Jim, sorry.
Okay.
It's in your packet, too.
Yeah. It's easier to pull it up on paper. So, again, I'm not really clear on the, I don't remember the content of the letter, Jim, so you're going to have to help me with this.
So Verizon had offered the town the opportunity to co-locate on their tower on Freiburg Parkway for municipal and public safety purposes. They also offered the town the opportunity to discuss with them municipal rates for their telecommunications. And I don't know if someone is prepared to talk about that this evening from Verizon.
Sure, I can address that further if you wish. As Mr. Robbins mentioned, and my colleague Mike Chimo submitted the letter in November, so I won't go through it in detail. But generally speaking, the two forms of mitigation that we had put on the table were one, discounted service rates for first responders in the town, primarily police and fire department personnel. And then secondly, the ability for the fire department to co-locate their equipment on the existing switch tower on the site. Part of the reason why we did offer these as the primary means of mitigation is that it's the type of mitigation that Verizon is uniquely situated to provide to the town. I don't think there's a lot of towers around that are just ready and waiting for co-locators. But in this case, my client has space and they're willing to make it available to the town at a nominal fee. I think it was $1 a year is essentially what it would be. I don't have a number to give you, but what I can say for certain is that if a private party were to approach my client and ask to co-locate on that tower, it certainly wouldn't be for $1 a year. So from that standpoint, in able to better improve the public safety services, communication services using that tower, and also to be able to do so at basically no cost to the town, we feel it is a very substantial mitigation offering here.
Could you just, you said that you would offer the town a discounted rate for being able to use the tower. What kind of fees, out of curiosity, are we talking about? I mean, I have no idea what the usual cost of a fee is to use the tower, and is there a possibility you would allow the town to use it at no cost?
It would be at nominal cost, literally at $1 a year.
Oh, all right.
And that's really just so that we can formalize it and execute the agreement.
We won't even look for that dollar.
Right. I assure you that nobody's going to be checking for the.
Right, no, okay,
for that
well, I
$1
just
check
wanted
on an
some
annual
clarification on that as to, you know, when you said nominal, I wanted to know what we were talking about. So this would be a benefit to the town in the fact that we would not have to pay, and it would increase the telecommunications ability of the various emergency services within the town to use that tower.
That's correct.
And I guess the only other thing I would ask is how do we determine the discounted, I think there was an offer of discounted communications for,
For the first responders?
at least for emergency
Okay.
personnel.
I should probably answer. So we have somebody that I can give you the name of this individual that supplies municipalities with the reduced rate Verizon has, that does the accounts, and I can offer, give you that name of that person. Then you can send, you contact that person. I've already spoken to this person quite a while ago, and I just have to find the name and send it. So that's something I could send to Jim, send it out to other people.
I was just looking for Fred's comments. We had a response from, I've got it here.
You got it, okay.
We had a response from Jim to that, and I think his big issue was that the burden on the town during the construction period. I think I recognize that, but, anytime you build something that's going to create a new tax construction. I really don't have any other questions on this. I think I'm satisfied with what you guys have proposed. Does anyone else have comments?
I think it's very beneficial for the town to be able to put the equipment on the tower. The fire department, we had a subgroup probably a month or two ago, and the fire department did stress that it's an ideal location. So I do appreciate that you guys came to and brought that to the table.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So in their correspondence with us, the applicant mentioned willingness to consider those two concessions. I think my question is for Jim, I guess at least at first, is there someone at the fire department that's been negotiating with the applicant directly, or how?
Not to my knowledge. However, the community development director may know more information about that. Fred is here.
Okay. So I'm just wondering where the request, the way I read the letter, I may have misinterpreted it, was that the fire department approached the applicant about siting something on one of their towers. So I'm wondering who from the town did that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. So we had a work session and with representatives of Verizon, and the fire department did have a representative at that
Okay.
work session.
All right, so this is a priority of the fire department to do this?
Yes.
Okay. And the second concession regarding service fees, that's something that I would imagine is negotiated by the town centrally, okay?
Yes.
So do we have somebody on point to be able to follow through
That
on
would
that?
probably be the fire chief and the town manager.
Okay.
Well, are we envisioning that the police department will benefit from this as well?
The police
Should
department as
probably-
well.
We should probably include the police chief in
Okay.
the discussion. I think that those negotiations will carry out, that we want to structure the decision so that those negotiations can be finalized after we make our decision.
Right.
Yeah, I would ask for input.
Yeah, I would just conclude by saying I'm satisfied that that mitigation is satisfactory to me for this applicant, so.
Yeah, if I could, I would ask for
I'll move
input
forward
from the
with faith.
two chiefs and from the town manager and the community development director.
Maybe the finance director too might be involved with that, but regardless, whoever wants to, we're going to structure the decision so that the town administration can figure out who's going to negotiate that with Verizon. I don't
Get a lease.
I don't think this board is going to be involved with those negotiations, so.
Right.
Can I just ask a point of information? We're talking about the discounted rate just for the benefit of the town and people who are watching. What kind of money are we talking about? I mean, in other words, I don't have any idea how much it costs to put on it, to rent space on a tower. So it's out of pure curiosity, and I think just for information, for at least for me, is what, I mean, do people normally pay $10,000 a year to put it on there? Do they pay $200 a year?
I'm not in that line of business, but my understanding is, at a minimum, it's probably about $1,300 a month.
Okay, I think that's an important fact for the town to realize that, or the town, the people that are watching is to
There's a lot of
realize.
variables involved.
I understand
I think
that.
if you just want
Yeah.
a round number, that's probably,
Yeah.
that's
But
at a minimum.
It's a significant amount of money, and I just wanted
month.
people to understand exactly what kind of monies we were talking about as far as mitigation, and it wasn't a small amount. So thank you.
All right, any further questions from the board on this? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address this? Fred, did you have any comments?
Sure.
Yep.
President Arnold, Community Development Director, talking to the chief, the co-location doesn't do them any good. So that's really of not benefit to the fire department, my understanding. That's kind of where we stand on that. As far as the second item, I don't think anybody's approached that or talked about how that would work. So those are kind of my retorts to those.
Okay, well, again, I don't think we need to have another work session on this. I think we should be able to structure a decision on this that gives the town the ability to finalize some discounted rates for emergency responders. I mean, I'm counting on you to write that. Any questions from the public then? All right. All right, I see, I think do we need to continue the public hearing, or can we?
No, I think you should close the public hearing and move to a decision at your next meeting.
You want me to read that motion?
Sure.
So I move that the planning board close the public hearing for 400 Freiburg Parkway Verizon site plan review application.
Second.
Okay, Hazel got the second. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? Do we have to do a roll call on the hybrid meetings?
You might, just
All right,
so
why don't we do a
people
roll
don't
call
know.
then? Pete Bouchard,
Yes.
Tim Kaler,
Taylor, yes.
Hazel Nurse,
Yes?
and Mark Silverberg votes yes as well. That's 4-0 in favor of closing the public hearing. And we will see you at our next, are you going to be ready for
21st.
21st at 6:30? Hopefully have a draft decision circulated to you and the board the week before that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, I appreciate it. All right, next item on the agenda. I'm so disorganized tonight, guys, I'm sorry. Continue public hearing for site plan review at 165 Flanders Road. Have someone here for Bill or engineering?
The project engineer will not be here due to an illness in the family.
Do we need a request to continue that public hearing?
No, there's no request to continue the hearing. They wish to move forward, and I've drafted a decision for the board.
Okay. Any Why don't you summarize where we're at on that again, Jim, and then we'll go to the
So you may recall at our last meeting, the applicant made their presentation for an expansion of the parking lot that serves Cumberland Farms at 165 Flanders Road. The company is owned by EG America, and their proposal is to expand the existing parking facility by 97 spaces to accommodate additional employees at the property. There will be no new building. There's no new building footprint. This project involves only the construction of new parking, associated lighting and landscaping, and a sidewalk to connect the other existing parking to this new parking. It is an open-air parking lot. It's not a structure. The engineer has received a copy of this proposed approval. The town departments, including fire, community development, and DPW and engineering, also received it. I received 2 comments from the town engineer, which I incorporated in this decision. The edits were reviewed by the engineer representing the project engineer, who is Luke DiStefano. Luke was in contact with me several times today. He is fine with all of the conditions. He reached out to his applicant, Cumberland Farms. They also are in agreement with this proposed decision, and they wish that we move forward as written.
So we're at a point, I think, where we can probably close the public hearing, but let's see if there's any questions from the board or the public before we do that. Anyone have questions?
I have no questions.
Anyone in the public have questions on the 165 Flanders Road project? Sherry, you're not the public, but you count, so.
I just wanted to.
I'm sorry, Sherry, just name and title for the.
Hi, I'm Sherry Wittes, the Conservation Director for the town of Westborough.
Come close to the microphone. Thanks.
Can you hear me now? There we
Now.
go. I'm Sherry Wittes. I serve the town as the Conservation Director for the town of Westborough. I just wanted to briefly discuss the possibility of the easement for the proposed bike path on the front. I didn't see the email till earlier, so I didn't have a comment on that. But that drainage channel gets dug out on a regular basis, and it also is in floodplain. Both of those, I think, would impact
I
having.
cannot
Yeah, I
understand you
can't
or
either.
hear you.
Sure, sorry. So there was a proposal for the bike path to be on that side of the road from Cumberland Farms on the street by Flanders Road. There was a draft map shown. That drainage channel gets dug out occasionally because it gets sediments from 495 and the Mass Pike in it. And it also is in the floodplain. So putting the path on that area will be problematic for permitting it. It will also get impacted if they go to dig the channel out. They're going to destroy the path. So it's probably not the best place to put that. And I don't know if that was in your decision, but I didn't get to comment on that earlier. I keep touching that.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so Sherry, if the applicant gave us an easement in that area, but it could not be permitted through conservation, you wouldn't oppose the easement, but the work would not be permitted, so we couldn't use the rights in the easement.
So that's not actually conservation, but yes, it would be Board of Health because floodplain falls under their regulations. So anything they proposed, they could have existing, but they couldn't fill to make it degrade because you can't fill a floodplain.
Understood. So are you suggesting that we not even bother to take the easement because we couldn't exercise it?
No, because maybe you could build something on like a boardwalk there. But I would pull the easement further away from the channel because the channel getting excavated will be impacted by whatever you do there.
And the channel is entirely on private property, right?
To my knowledge, yes.
Yeah, so the concept of this easement is to expand the area of the path that would be built in the right-of-way. So that generally, if the path is uniform, it would be 10 feet of usable space, most of which would be in the public way. The easement would be to allow it to encroach slightly in private property and maybe an area to work in the private property, but obviously they'd have to stay out of the channel.
Yeah.
So the applicant is fine granting the easement. They understand there'd be restrictions
Okay.
to the easement. Going forward, I think it would be wise to take the easement. I'm not sure how much we could use in it, but I think that if we don't take anything, we might short the trail in the short term.
Yeah, it was my understanding that the easement was kind of a fallback option for
Right.
them, depending on the state providing another route under 495. So
Correct.
it may just be a temporary use easement from our standpoint until another direction for the B-Walt is established.
Right.
So I think it's probably a valuable easement for the short term, but it may never be used. Or that, and if, in my opinion, if the applicant's willing to give it to us, I don't see the harm in taking it. The B-Walt proponents will have to deal with conservation and Board of Health and whoever they'll have to deal with when the path is actually built. So.
Is the applicant aware of the fact of the questions that Sherry's raised about the essentially could be unusable easement? I mean, essentially, it is a fallback type easement. I mean, was there any request from the applicant or comment about the fact that, if this easement is never going to be used or is not going to be applicable, whether they would wish to have it revert back?
We haven't even discussed any of the language that would be put into the use in the easement. That would come at a later date. They're willing to work with the town as long as any of the encumbrances in the easement do not affect their ability to clean that channel or exercise their rights on their own property.
Yeah, that's my concern. And the thing is that, having outstanding easements, I just wanted to make sure that the applicant was fully aware of the fact that, an easement is a burden on property. And the question is, if it's an easement which is not going to do any good for anybody, that, there should be perhaps an end of life or something. So I just want to make sure the applicant has, understands where the town is coming from, because it's a very unusual situation in the fact that there's this drainage that's there.
Make that point. Tim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I had a question for Sherry. I wondered, the B-Walt feasibility study's been completed recently. Did the Conservation Board, did you have an involvement in that work?
Yes.
Okay. So it's the Bike and Pedestrian Safety Committee that is sponsoring that work?
Yes.
And there's representatives, the town planner, the community development director sit on that board. I'll just say for comment.
I sit on it too.
Okay. Appreciate you bringing the point forward. The applicant, the private applicant's been willing to grant us an easement for this at our request, again, at the town request, based on something coming from someone on the B-Walt committee. This is the second project, private project, coming up recently where we're debating B-Walt design and easements related to a private property owner's project. So I would say is that, we need a requirement that we can go to where, where these issues are dealt with. We're spent 10 minutes of meeting time over something that should never have come to this applicant to begin with. And I'm not going to be supportive of it. I'm going to move the discussion. The town needs to coordinate across departments, decide what it is that we require of these applicants, and if we're not prepared to do that, then we're not prepared to do that as a board. I mean, in this case, again, the applicant's been willing to give us the easement that we requested. I think we should pursue it for the reasons mentioned. But again, this is a faulty process, in my opinion. If the easement is actually moot, if there's no possibility of relocating the B-Walt Trail in this particular location, at least under present rules. That's what I'm understanding Sherry to say.
Yeah, I think, I feel like we're overcomplicating this. We don't have I think we should recognize that an easement is a possibility there. They're willing to give it to us. I think we need to structure this decision so that the town and the applicant can finalize the details of that easement in the future.
Yeah.
And we can move forward with the decision on this.
I'm not sure I understand your comment, Tim, because each easement is going to be different depending on its location. Where the easement runs along a road, like this, in this case, Flanders Road, the width of the road and the path within the right-of-way is going to determine how much we need to work in the easement. So each easement is going to be different. The request came from a member of the Active Transportation Safety Committee, who's also one of the designers of the B-Wall, and the request was just that if we need it, can we have it? And Cumberland has said yes. Now, if they can't build it because of floodplain or ACEC considerations, drainage maintenance considerations, then they can't build it, but we're not going to know that until they actually begin engineering it.
I guess my point is the person from the Bicycle Safety Committee, do they understand that the floodplain, the other constraints?
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay, and they want to make the request nonetheless?
Yes.
So that's fine, I'm with Mark,
Yes.
let's move ahead then.
Okay.
Let's not spend any more time on it. It's not, we're not designing B-Wall here, and this is a
Correct.
backup position in any event.
I think it's clear that they could come to an agreement on an easement now, and then when the B-Wall is actually built, that easement might not even be the right
Correct,
easement.
correct, and that's going to be the case
But at
every
least-
time we talk about this.
At least we're trying to look ahead and procure this easement now with the idea that this is a possible alternative route for the B-Wall. And if the applicant's willing to give it to us, I see no harm in taking it.
And I'm not opposed to that either.
Okay, all right. This is still a public hearing. Any further comments from the board? Anything else from the public then? Sherry, you're all set? Fred, did you have anything? Jim, anything else?
No, I have nothing further.
Okay. I will make a motion to close the public hearing then.
Second that.
I heard a second from Pete. Any further discussion? All those in favor, we'll do a roll call again. Hazel Nurse,
Yes.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Pete Bouchard,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 4-0 in favor of closing the public hearing. Jim, you have a draft decision. Are we ready to go through that tonight?
Sure.
Okay, why don't you take us through that, and we can open it up to questions from the board. I did see some comments from Hazel today. I don't know if those are incorporated in this, but let us know if they are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you have a decision draft, it's a draft decision, in front of you dated today, December 7th, 2021. The first page describes the application and the existing conditions on the site. The second page describes the proposed project itself. It's an expansion of the existing parking to increase the spaces from 496 to 593, and including 2 additional handicap spaces. The project will also include a sidewalk connecting the new parking area to the rest of the facility's campus. It'll include lighting and landscape improvements. The proposed project will require minor filling of a small area of the floodplain, a compensatory floodplain storage area, which will be created by the applicant to store water elevations above the proposed floodplain and to accommodate stormwater controls. Those items are shown on the plan and were reviewed by the Conservation Commission. The next section lists the plans that were submitted, including the drainage report, also letters from the applicant in response to town review. There's a geotechnic exploration evaluation also included. Then the conditions of approval begin on page 3. Number 1, the newly constructed parking area and all plans approved through the planning board for the site plan review with comments from all departments shall be verified through record plans stamped by a licensed engineer of record and supplemented by construction as-built plans. Said plan shall include all required landscaping, utilities, lighting, plot plans, site improvements, and/or other requirements as specified in the approved decision. The plan shall be approved by the town engineering department, the building or other departments to verify the as-bills. There shall be, number 2, there shall be no parking of construction vehicles or construction worker vehicles in the right-of-way on Flanders Road at any time. All vehicles shall be parked interior to the project site. Number 3, there shall be no loading or offloading of vehicles or materials in the right-of-way on Flanders Road at any time. All activities, including loading or offloading of materials, shall be conducted interior to the site. There shall be no parking of vehicles, equipment, or construction materials in any area that hinders the town's ability to access and maintain the sewer pumping station on site. Number 4 deals with lighting. Outdoor lighting owned and maintained by the applicant shall conform to the requirements of the Westborough zoning bylaws and shall be as represented on the plans. The illumination levels of these outdoor lights shall not exceed the state maximum specified for parking areas. There shall be no glare or light pollution caused to adjacent properties. No lighting installations in the parking area shall exceed, new lighting areas in the parking area shall not exceed a maximum of 20 feet in height, including the installation base as measured from the ground elevation. The lighting fixtures shall be full cutoff design so as to prevent light spilling outside of the parking area. Number 5, the stormwater management plan, operations and management plan shall identify where snow shall be stockpiled. Number 6, prior to enforcement of construction activities, the applicant shall have addressed and resolved the comments contained in the town engineer's comment letters as noted in this decision. Number 7, prior to commencement of activities, the applicant shall hold a pre-construction meeting with the town at the direction of the town engineering department. Number 8, and this has to do with the easement we just discussed. The applicant shall provide the town with an 8-foot wide easement across the frontage of its property for use by the public for the Boston to Worcester Airline Trail, the B-Walt multi-use trail. This easement shall allow the town to construct a shared use path with grass strip along the front of 165 Flanders Road. The easement shall be surveyed and shown on the final easement plan and delivered to the town for review and approval prior to being recorded at the Worcester County Registry of Deeds. This easement plan shall be complete, approved by the town, and recorded at the registry prior to the completion of the new parking area. Hours of construction. The hours of construction operations, including in materials processing activities for the project shall be limited to the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Was there any discussion about that? You sometimes discuss the hours.
Yeah, I raised that because I really, most construction we end at noon on Saturdays, and I know there are not a lot of residential dwellings down in that particular area, but I was also a little concerned about the length of time that we were allowing extra time on this particular project. Jim did come back to me and say that it was a non-residential area and that this might allow the project to be completed in a shorter manner than it would be otherwise. So I just wondered if anyone else had a comment on that.
I would prefer the longer hours and just get the project done faster.
Yeah, I do think it's in an area where it won't inconvenience residents. I don't think the additional hours on Saturday will be a burden to anybody. The abutters had a chance to.
I just would like that comment on the record because people will look at this and say, well, they got a longer construction period than, we got, and why was this done? So I just want to make it clear that for the public, the reason we were lengthening these particular hours on a Saturday.
Well, I think it's important to get that on the record, and I agree with you that it's a good thing to think about, but I don't think we need to make any changes, Jim, so why don't you proceed?
Okay. Operation of construction equipment by a paid contractor outside the hours specified may be allowed only by written permission of the building commissioner. Number 10, the applicant shall comply with all federal, state, and local regulations, including but not limited to CMR Chapter 90, Section 16A, governing vehicle idling at the site. Number 11, hauling of materials shall, such as fill materials or construction or demolition debris and the like, to and from the project, shall only be allowed from Route 9 to Connector Road to Flanders Road. There shall be no hauling of materials on other local streets. During the days of, number 12, during the days of construction on the site, at the end of each day, the applicant shall ensure that its construction debris or other materials tracked onto Flanders Road be cleaned up on that portion of Flanders Road adjacent to the site and in other locations along Flanders Road as may be necessary.
Can I just, my only question on that was, should we include Connector Road and the area up towards Route 9? Normally, would we run the entire length of, particularly since we're coming off 9, whether there would be any requirement to make sure that those were clear also, or could we just assume that Flanders Road is going to be sufficient?
So I generally don't, and this is just from past experience, I don't list state roads. Connector Road is a state road because it's difficult to know if any debris or dirt is caused by the contractor associated with that site, because those roads are heavily traveled, they're regional roads. It could be from another project.
Fine.
Number 13, the applicant shall comply with all requirements of the Westborough Conservation Order of Conditions, number 332-894. And this is important because this refers to the items that Sherry was discussing earlier. Because this area has a lot of floodplain and an area of critical environmental concern that we call an ACEC, the order of conditions is really the most important thing with regard to work on this site. Number 14 lists the comment letters from town departments, as well as the letter that's forthcoming from the town engineer dated today. Number 15, there were 3 waivers requested from the applicant, and I have listed them at the start of page 6. In order to build the project, they'll need a waiver from our site plan review regulations, section 1.7, contents of the application, and they drew the plans to a scale other than what's required, which is 1 inch equals 40 feet, and that the reason for that is noted here. The existing contour plan sheet is drawn to a scale of 1 inch equals 120 feet in order to show the entire parcel on one sheet. The fire truck turning sheet, which is CFG 04.2, is drawn to 1 inch equals 20 scale, equals 20 feet. The other sheets are drawn at 1 inch equals 30 feet, as the larger scale allows for improved legibility and greater detail. This is a large site, as you know, which was mentioned earlier. In order to get the entire site on one sheet, you're going to have to vary the scale. So I think it's a reasonable request. The town engineer agrees with it as well. Item B, regulations section 1.7D, contents of application, subsection 20, the location of fire hydrants, size and location of water mains to include fire protection mains, fire department, storage, sprinkler connection to be within 100 feet of a fire hydrant, and post indicator valves if mechanical room does not have direct exterior access. There are no hydrants proposed. The proposed improvements are for a new parking area. No new building is proposed. There are currently multiple existing fire hydrants elsewhere on the project site. Therefore, additional hydrants are not needed. I confirmed this with the fire department. They have no need for additional hydrants. The building is already served by adequate fire protection. There are post indicator valves already on the site. Item C, regulation section 1.7D, contents of application, subsection 22. Identify traffic circulation patterns and no parking fire lane signage and striping. There are no fire lane signage or striping proposed. The proposed improvements are for new parking area only. No new building is proposed. You have fire lanes up against the existing building. There's no need for additional fire lanes, as this is only a parking lot. Those are the requested waivers. I recommend you grant them as requested. Sections 16 and 17 are boilerplate. They have to do with modifications to the plan and non-performance, which you have in all of your site plan review approvals.
I have just one comment, but I just want to turn to the rest of the board to see if anybody had anything. So, Jim, I'm not sure, I don't think zoning requires car charging stations, right?
Zoning does not require it, the building code.
So we had a letter from Bowler Engineering on this that said, in response to the Board of Selectmen request for for sustainable, the Board of Selectmen commented that with the increase in the parking lot, the planning board should consider how this project aligns with the master plan specific to achieving sustainability goals. And the response was the applicant is proposing 2 car charging stations on the east side of the building. Do we need to incorporate that in the site, in the decision?
It's in their site plan.
In
So
their
you're
site-
going
it's on the site plan?
to approve the modified plan.
Okay, as long as it's on the site plan, then I think we're okay.
And our building commissioner, who's still out in the hall, is prepared to speak to that. If you want to ask him, I can go get him.
I won't speak for him. He commented in writing this afternoon that the energy code doesn't apply to this project because there's no structure being built. It's just a parking lot, so it's amendment.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm concerned that we have, if they're volunteering to do it, I don't want them to backtrack on it later.
As long as it's on the site plan, I assume that would take care of it.
Yeah, honestly,
They're volunteering to do it, it's because it's at their discretion. It's not part of the building code that applies to them.
No, but if they put it on the site plan, that's what we're approving is the site plan. So we're not forcing them to do it, but they have volunteered it.
Okay, and
If
Jim is
on
saying it's on the
then
site
it's
plan.
approved.
You want to point it out to us?
no, I believe him, and I just want to make sure that, I would like to see car charging stations put on the site, and if they're willing to do it, then, I don't think we need to make it a requirement of the decision, but I'm glad to hear that they're doing it. And suggestion by you, I think, and by the Board of Selectmen. So I'm going to leave that alone and just move that forward. That was the only question I had. Anything else? Do you want to make a motion? We have a draft motion, I think.
Yeah, I can read it.
Thanks.
I move that the planning board approve the site plan review for 165 Flanders Road, E.G. America, Cumberland Farms parking expansion, parenthetically, with the conditions stated in the site plan approval decision number 2021-6 dated December 7th, 2021, with any appropriate edits and changes discussed this evening.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? We'll do a roll call again. Peter Bouchard?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes to approve.
I vote yes to approve as well. That's 4-0 in favor. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have a discussion on the town planner reporting authority. I don't want to spend a long time on this tonight because we have the Northborough town planner coming in next meeting. But if anybody wants to ask any questions or make any comments on this.
I have some comments I'd like to
Hazel,
make.
go ahead.
All right. I've kind of thought long and hard about this, and I have some comments that I'd just like to make on this for people to think about. The charter of 1974 and 2018 set up 4 elected boards, one of which was the planning board. And they were to be independent and have an authority to hire their own personnel. The proposed change takes away the planning board's authority to do this and gives it to a town manager appointed person, which I might add may not have background or expertise in planning. Secondly, the appointment of a community development director does not streamline our town staffing patterns, which is the purpose that we have been given to do this, but simply adds another unnecessary level of bureaucracy, and the town is planning to spend $100,000 to do this. And further, the requirement that the town planner be subordinate to a new community development director diminishes and interferes with the authority and independence of the town planner and the board. It will also cause confusion to developers who are working with the town as to who has the ultimate authority for the decision-making. The present situation under which the Community Development Director is the supervisor of the town planner, the building department, the conservation department, and the economic developer coordinator cannot and also has the option, according to the way it is drafted that we received, and has the option to perform the function and duties of those departments makes no sense at all, since that person cannot be knowledgeable or have the background in all those disciplines. The present situation whereby the town has appointed a community development director who is not trained as a planner, conservationist, or economic development person seems poorly thought out, according to me, or that's my feelings about it. It would be much more productive for the town if the 4 departments could work together to promote community development and meet on a regular basis to come up with ideas in this area which could be presented to the Board of Selectmen and the town manager for implementation. We don't need another town employee in charge and with additional budgetary expense. I'm strongly opposed to this new proposed article, as I don't think it will be of benefit to the town or the planning board.
All right, any other comments or questions on this? So, I have a number of comments on this. I was going to save them for the next meeting. I did talk to 2 other town planners, one who reports directly to a mayor and one who reports to a land use director, which would be similar role to development director. Both of those town planners absolutely supported, structure, this type of structure. They appreciated that there was a layer between them and politics. To administration. I previously voiced my satisfaction with the fact that this board is, in particular, the chair is required to do administrative duties, function of a citizen volunteer. I also I agree that the community development director should have a town planning background, but the way the charter is currently written, the community development director reports to the town manager, which would preclude the town planner from ever being hired into that position. And I would like to see the opportunity for a town planner to advance to that position in the future, and I just find it, I just can't believe that we would oppose that opportunity for a future town planner, particularly because I do think that that role should have a planning background. Those are just some of the thoughts I had. I'll probably think of 5 more things I want to say, but that's why we're going to move this forward. I really haven't heard a compelling argument to not do this, and I don't really agree with a lot of your sentiments. Let's move this on. I see Steve. Steve, just name and address for the record, and I'm sure you have some input on this.
Steve Durant, 23 Mill Road. My credentials for this discussion are that I was chairman of the planning board for a long period of time from 1976 to 1986, and therefore know what your role is based on Mass General Law. The planning board is an elected group and is required to be responsible to the public and the electorate. Staff of the planning board, including the town planner, needs to be responsive to the planning board members as needed and as requested. Planning board function and responsiveness to the requirements of Mass General Law. And the current charter requires that the town planner to be hired by and report directly to the planning board. I was a member of the Charter Commission that created the text that you are discussing tonight, and the fact that the town planner, during those discussions, was specifically from the review of the committee, belongs to the planning board and should be responsive to the planning board and be hired thereof, so that you have the right to require certain responsibilities of that worker, the credentials of that worker when you hire them, and if need be, to be able to fire that person if they're not performing what your duty is under Mass General Law. To do otherwise really doesn't make any sense. Do the requirements and the duties to be performed are required to satisfy Mass General Law on behalf of the planning board, and therefore myself, as a member of the public who requires you to do things that are defined in the charter and to be responsive to the public who elected you. And if you don't have the ability to change people who work for you to do the job that I hired you, that I voted for you to do, then I don't think you can perform your function. So having read the 177-page report on town staffing, there are sections in the report that discuss the town planner. And I don't believe that consultant understood the role of the town planner, or for that matter, the role of the planning board as defined under Mass General Law. It lists the committees served by the town planner and implies that the planner is spread very thin in this process. However, by putting him in the organizational structure that they talk to, would even have more responsibility doing other things in that list of people, and I don't believe, in fact, that it serves the town in any particular way, and they didn't define any particular benefit to having set it up in that manner. Furthermore, by virtue of reporting through another organizational structure and not directly to the planning board, I think weakens the role and responsibility of the planning board, as well as the type of work that would be received by the planning board on behalf of the public. I didn't see any justification for the requirement for the change. And as I said, I don't see any benefit to the community for that change, particularly when you look at the dollar value of the changes that they requested that was going to have to be additionally raised and appropriated. As an elected board, its staff should remain hired by the elected board, who has a responsibility under Mass General Law to be able to determine the qualifications necessary to serve the committee, and if necessary, to terminate the staff employee if not sufficient to provide the service necessary by the planning board to perform your function. And as you guys discussed, you receive reports from the planning board on almost everything you do. And why in the world would you ever want that person to be under the control of two different organizations, which is not part of your function in any way as elected officials to do this job as defined under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, starting at Section 81AA. So those are my comments, and I really don't see any need, necessity, or benefit to this particular offered change, which ultimately would have to be voted by the town meeting with a charter change. So those are my comments, and I would speak to those at town meeting in exactly the same way. Thanks.
I'm a little confused about the additional costs related to this. Christy, I see your hand up. Is that what you want to address? Okay. Christy Williams, Town Manager. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the comments.
I just wanted to offer some clarifying comments. There was no cost associated with this change. The staffing study did offer a cost in potentially creating additional positions, but we've already created a community development director, and so there's no cost associated with the town planner reporting to that position. I also wanted to offer that the comments about the community development director may have such titles as building commissioner, town planner, conservation director, economic development coordinator. That's consistent with what we've done when we've created other sort of divisions within the community. When we created the finance director position, it specifically says that that individual may hold the title of town accountant or treasurer collector. And the purpose of that is that you're elevating that department head into the community development department role, or sorry, community development director role, and not that that person is also the town planner, the economic development coordinator, building commissioner. So right now we have someone who also holds the title of building commissioner in that role. If the change were to be made, it could also be someone who held the title of town planner in that role. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And then just going back to comments made about your authority under Mass General Law, the reporting authority of the town planner does not change your authority under Mass General Law. So I just wanted to offer those comments.
So, Christy, this proposal would still require planning board concurrence with any hiring and any firing?
Correct. When we did the last charter change, there were several departments where we moved department heads that were reported to boards and committees under the town manager. And at the time, we received advice from legal counsel that any concurrence to appoint would also require a concurrence to remove.
So the only real difference is that the planning board, I don't want to say the only real difference because there's other differences, but from that standpoint, the only difference is that the planning board could not initiate a dismissal?
I would expect that the planning board would be in communication with the community development director if there were concerns related to the town planner. But the planning board would need concurrence from the community. It would be a two-way street in this scenario.
Yeah.
And the planning board couldn't fire the town planner without community development.
Exactly, and that's consistent with other positions in the town that require concurrence. Often, there are several positions where the town manager hasn't the appointment authority, but the select board has to concur with that appointment.
However, they're not elected.
Correct.
And that's I really think is a key to this, and I think we have to keep this in mind, is that we're an elected board, and that really it's the public that elects us, and therefore the ultimate authority comes from the public. I mean, that's who we are serving, is the public.
Isn't isn't every town employee ultimately serving the public? I don't understand this. No?
No.
We can't fire the town manager.
Well, there's a process. Somebody could bring a complaint to the Board of Selectmen, and if it were viable, it would result in a firing, right? Ultimately, every town employee reports to the town, and their mission should be the success of the town, I don't understand okay, let me ask you one more question. We did something similar with the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Director used to report directly to the Conservation Commission, and is that true? Or now they report to the Community Development Director?
So the Conservation Director actually used to be the Assistant Town Planner / Conservation Agent, so actually was reporting to the Town Planner. And then that was pulled out from the Planning Department, and they reported to the Town Manager. So they haven't, so it's working.
So the Conservation Agent used to be part of the Planning Department and
yes,
have a similar. So the planning board would have been responsible for hiring that?
Jim would have to answer that in terms of who hired that position at the time. But it does say in the charter that the planning board can give authority to the town planner to hire members of your department. So I assume that Jim did that hiring.
So thanks. A little bit of history here. When the Assistant Town Planner / Conservation Agent was created, that position reported to me and was hired by me. Then when that position was pulled out to report to the town manager, those duties were changed, and I no longer had oversight or hiring capability for that position.
A lot of the charter changes in the most recent charter review pulled a lot of department heads that were previously reporting to boards and committees pulled the reporting authority into the town manager, but they continue to staff. So that's true with Council on Aging Director, Youth and Family Services, Recreation, Conservation and EDC also reports to the Community Development Director, but staff boards and committees. So, to Hazel's point, those are not elected, but that's examples of staff that fully staff a board or committee while reporting to a town employee.
Okay, Steve, did you have a question?
I guess there's 2 points I want. First of all,
You're going to need to come to the microphone.
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's, the masks
I
make it
can't read
difficult to
lips,
hear. So.
can't hear people.
Yeah.
Here.
All of the things that we're talking about, first of all, has nothing to do with the current people who sit in any of these slots. It's really my own philosophy of what a town and the town process is, and the town meeting process is one that gives each one of us the right as citizens to control our government. This model that's in the charter now that continues to creep forward is actually, without saying it, becoming a city under a mayor, in which all things then are controlled by the mayor and the mayor's departments as they are created. My opinion is that as a town, the town should remain the animal of the electorate. And if I vote in the wrong people, I want to have the ability to remove those people and change the things that in fact are there. That to me is what a town is, particularly in New England. I mean, you can go to other places in this country and they have towns, but they're set up in such a way that they're different animals than what we have in New England. They have town supervisors who in effect have the power of basically individually to be able to follow pretty much the model that has a town manager in it that manages everything. My issue here simply is that if you, as elected officials, are responsible for your job as defined under Mass General laws, then you should have the right and responsibility and the wish to control the people that work for you and be able to change something personally because you are elected by me to do this job as defined in Mass General law. And if you can't change that person, if you have to ask and beg for someone else to change what you wish to do, you can't do your job. I've been in this town for an awful long time, and there were times historically where you couldn't get people out because they were protected under different umbrellas. And as was said by Christie and by the committee that created the charter that you're working, mostly the charter you're working with now, that we recognize that those appointees that existed under non-elected officials, such as the town manager, or for that matter, the DPW or others, that in fact they needed to have the responsibility to control the people that work for them. And in fact, that's the way it was set up. But for those committees that are elected, we left within the responsibility of those committees the ability to hire and fire people that do the job I voted you in to do, without any other thing. Because if you couldn't control it, you can't hide behind anything. And therefore, it's your responsibility, in my opinion, to hire the right person with the right credentials to do the job.
Well, okay, Steve.
And that's it. That's my point. I really don't want to talk about it anymore because that's my own feeling, and that's the reason why I've been, on various committees in this town for almost 50 years.
So the summary of your argument, Steve, is that the planning board should have the authority to fire the town planner.
And hire the town planner.
That's the benefit.
Without asking
That's the
anybody
benefit
else.
Well, the hiring is still part of it.
No, it isn't. You have to ask someone to allow you, or for that person, in this scenario.
The way this is written, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the community development director cannot hire somebody without the
consent, without your consent.
Right.
Okay? But if he chooses to leave a person in, you're dead.
Right. So essentially, you think the planning board should have the authority to fire somebody?
Yeah, as you do now.
Okay. Okay. that's-
My real answer
I'll
is
take
why
that
change
point,
it?
yeah.
What benefit does the town get to change it?
I don't think that that one benefit outweighs all the benefits of this change. I mean, I
don't know what they
I don't
are.
agree with you.
But thank you. Thanks for the opportunity
No, thank you.
to discuss it.
The other thing I wanted to mention, another thing I like about the change is the assimilation, if you will, of new employees to have the support of a department, as opposed to a town planner coming in who might not be part of a department, might only have Kristen to show them the ropes.
I don't think,
Yeah, I mean, I
don't
think
understand
that-
your point at all, quite frankly, on that.
Well, I think it would be beneficial for a town planner to have an entire department explaining the processes, the site plan reviews, the zoning, the way the town is structured, the neighborhoods,
I don't understand where that comes into this. The change says nothing about that, as far as I can see. I think it only,
I think it's a obvious benefit of the change, Hazel. When Jim retires, we're going to hire a new town planner. The way it works now, this board will be responsible for training him, right? And to be honest with you, there are times when this board is staffed with people who are not that experienced.
yeah, but as I said, I don't see that as a result of this. I mean, I think I'm concerned really about the diminishment of the authority of the town planner by having him report to someone else, which I think is not of a benefit. I think the way the structure is that it would be.
Well, I don't understand that, though. The
yeah,
authority of
all
the
right,
town planner is really the authority of the planning board. And the only authority I see the planning board losing is the ability to fire the town planner.
But-
We would still
but
have the
why is-
ability to
yeah.
participate in the hiring. The site plan reviews are all still, special permit are all still
Yeah, but the
under
thing is, he
authority of this
is
board,
going to
so-
be under someone else, and that's what I don't understand, is why the town planners then going to have to report to this community development director, when I think that's totally unnecessary, and I think that I don't understand how a community development director can have background in supposedly planning, building, conservation, and economic development. It just doesn't make sense
But
to me
the
to
way
put
it's
in that
structured now,
extra
we would
thing.
never have a planner as a community development director.
No, but I don't know, I think we're talking at cross purposes, and at this
All
particular
right,
time,
I
it's the
agree
way we
with you.
read
Go
it.
ahead, Sid.
I'll just enter into the record, I think the staffing plan lays out quite clearly what the benefits and purpose of this are. I think it's just, there is nothing, you're setting up a false argument to say that the community development director has to possess functional expertise in all the areas under which the departments report to him. At this point, the review of the town planner, the alignment of the work that we're doing with the other departments in town, the benefits of that are clearly laid out in this. I don't believe there's any diminishment in our control to fire or to review anyone at this point. So I'm persuaded by the purposes and the benefits laid out in the staffing plan, which speaks extensively. I mean, I don't need to go through it, but it describes exactly what the objectives are. I'm not saying changes always has some cost or impact, but at least I'm persuaded by this, that the net benefits to this function and to the town will be enhanced. Because without it, this stands outside of the whole structure laid out for that department. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, we spent quite a bit of time. Pete, do you have any comments? You've been quiet.
Ready to move forward.
Okay. I thank you guys for coming in. We're going to continue this discussion at the next meeting on the 21st. the Northborough Town Planner, Kathy Jubert's going to be here to give us her insight on it. And, you know, I don't know what else to say right now. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is a discussion of the trans-oriented village affordable, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be transit-oriented village. I think that's a typo, right? Transit-oriented village, affordable housing requirements related to Chapter 40A, Section 3, new state regulations. Jim, do you want to summarize the new regulations?
So I can't summarize the new regulations because they haven't been fully promulgated.
That's a good point.
But they are going to be in the very near future, hopefully by the end of this month. That's what has been promised. And once they are, and even now, the town has been, all the towns in the Commonwealth that will be affected by this have been allowed an opportunity to comment on what their concerns are for the idea that if you host a transit station, a commuter rail station, or if you're in a budding town, we host a commuter rail station. The town of Northborough is in a budding town, so they're also affected by this. We have the opportunity to propose our ideas to the state as to how we would like to have their proposed regulations be modified for our benefit. So in the case of Westborough, right now we have a transit-oriented village zoning bylaw, which is to our benefit. It's very close to what the state has proposed in the past and will propose in the very near future. We would have to change our regulations to accommodate one additional unit, and we'd have to drop the requirement for a special permit in that district and allow them by right through site plan review. However, the state has said that they are willing to listen to proposals that would relocate that requirement for affordable housing with a base of having at least 15 units per acre. That might be something we would wish to do in our downtown and not require that at our transit-oriented village district. The state would listen to that as long as there's a cogent argument proposed that our other district, which in our case would be the downtown, would be a better location for that level of density, 15 units per acre. I think that's what this board has discussed prior when this idea was originally promulgated about 1.5 years ago. And you might want to transfer the density bonus to the downtown and relieve it from the current transit-oriented district, or leave it as it is in its current location and add the downtown.
So is the state going to allow, I mean, are you familiar with the way the transit village zoning is, that in order to get the density bonus, a developer has to acquire a sending parcel, so a parcel of open space somewhere else in town, and depending on the value, if you will, of that parcel to the town, the bonus can range from anywhere up to, in this case, it would have to be 15 units per acre. Is the state going to allow that structure to continue in a by right zoning? I don't understand how it becomes by right.
So the transfer of development rights is not considered under the state proposal.
So that part of the transit
Is unique to us.
But would that have to be eliminated as well as the
No,
conversion?
well, they are silent on that. When I discussed it with the director of the program, Chris Clutchman, on the phone, she said that, that's unique to Westborough. That could stay. So my suggestion to you is that you keep the transit-oriented village because it provides you a benefit of obtaining additional open space in exchange for a density bonus, and then request that the requirement for 15 units per acre be allowed in the downtown. Now, the problem with the way that the state language was originally crafted, and I haven't seen the new language because they haven't issued it yet, was that they would allow it in a different district as long as it was within a half a mile of the train station, and it's not. Our downtown is outside of that distance. So we would have to make the case that we should be allowed to determine where we'd like to have it. Now, in the case of an abutting town like Northborough, they don't even have a train station. So there's nothing within half a mile or even a mile of a train station, because their nearest train station is ours.
Well, I think that would be part of the argument, right? That towns that don't have train stations have the ability to determine anywhere in town they want to put that zone, and a town such as Westborough doesn't have that option. But more importantly, downtown is where the services are. It's where the schools are. It's where the shopping,
Makes sense.
it's walkable for most people. And the only advantage to being by the train station is being close to the commuter rail. We have a pretty inexpensive way for people to get to the commuter rail via ride share. And if the B-Walt is built, that will be a bikeable route basically from downtown to the train station. So it seems to me that we have a pretty coherent argument, but the capricious nature of some towns that don't have, all the towns that don't have train stations can put this zone wherever they want, but the towns with train stations are limited by a half a mile. I find that just completely arbitrary but my one question on this is, if they are going to approve the density bonus structure, would we want to consider putting that same structure in downtown? In other words, just extending the overlay to include downtown. And because I think that density bonus benefits the town. I mean, we got benefits
The problem is you have to allow 15 units by right. So there's no attraction for the bonus. So, I mean, if you wanted to say greater than 15 units maybe would require a sending parcel. I think you need to think about whether you keep the existing district in place and just create a new district that's your transit-oriented district that would fit the state requirements.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what comes first, the guidelines, or, do we get a waiver and then create the zoning, or do we create the zoning and bring it to the state and ask them for a waiver?
So you have a couple interesting things with our bylaw that currently exists, is that, number one, you've created at least two projects that fit the zoning, and one of them gave you 22 acres of open space on a water body that you now know is Veterans Freedom Park, and that project actually won the first Smart Growth Award in the state. So you've got a pretty good argument that our transit-oriented village bylaw has produced benefits for the community. In addition, you would like to keep that and create more affordable housing in a denser district in the downtown. I would think you could make a compelling argument for that.
I mean, I think all the point is moot until we get more sewer capacity, right?
Yeah, if we don't get more sewer capacity, we're going to be in trouble.
Right.
And that's not our job to fix. Is there something we can do to facilitate that?
Yeah, I think that with regard to this new state statute, you need to make an argument that one size does not fit all, and that we are willing to go above and beyond what the state requires. So we would keep our current transit-oriented village in place and maybe increase it to 1 unit per acre, go from 14 to 15. I don't see any advantage to not increase it. Then creating an additional district downtown that's by right for 15 units per acre.
Right.
Because you have the affordability requirement, 20% affordable. The state statute also requires at least 20% affordable. So that's very similar to what you already have.
So I guess my next question would be, we had some language in the master plan about a downtown village, and allowing more units on smaller lots downtown. I'm just trying to do the math in my head as if you were on a 10,000 square foot lot downtown, how many units would be 14 units per acre. That seems like a lot to me. It's
So that,
still be like four plus units on a 10,000 square foot lot. That's,
so, yeah, it's 1/4. If you had a 10,000 square foot lot, you'd have, it's 1/4 of an acre. So you'd have 1/4 of 15.
yeah, that seems pretty dense to me on smaller lots. Would we be able to put in a minimum lot size?
Oh, well, the states, would you put in a minimum lot size? I don't know, that's a question. What does our building commissioner think?
Well, only in residential people.
Okay.
4 units per 10,000 square foot lot, is that what you're asking me, or?
Well, what I'm saying is that, you know, if we were to promulgate multifamily zoning downtown that allowed 15 units per acre, would we be able to include a minimum lot size on it and still comply with the regulations that haven't been put out yet?
Well, I don't see why you couldn't. You do that with all the overlays. You dictate what the lot size has to be. You do it with open space, you do it with the depot.
Yeah,
So I don't know why that would be any different, Mark.
I don't have an issue necessarily if somebody's going to put lots together to create a bigger lot, but I don't want to see a bunch of 5-unit buildings springing up on 10,000 square foot lots. I think that's,
Well, that's the potential you'd have, though, if you have 15 units per acre.
well, that's why I'm suggesting a minimum lot size.
Yeah, you certainly could do that as part of the overlay. I don't see why you couldn't. It just, I don't, now you would have to, I don't know that we have big lots downtown, to be truthful. I don't know how big lots are. I haven't looked at them. All our downtown is, those buildings are on separate lots, and I don't know they're all that big.
We'd have to really look at where we wanted it. Maybe do something like we did on the overlay with, it only has frontage on the main roads. You can't do it on side streets, something like that. The senior housing overlay, you have to have frontage on East Main, West Main, South, or Milk. You couldn't build a senior housing project on Chestnut Street or something,
You could tailor the overlay to be specific areas of downtown, I suppose. I don't see why you couldn't do that, and I don't see any prohibition from you saying what the zoning has to be as far as lot size and stuff. Again, you do it in other forms throughout the zoning in town. I don't know why that would be any different, Mark.
Okay. The other question I would have is, could you limit the unit sizes?
I couldn't hear you.
Or could you limit the unit sizes?
Sorry, okay.
I don't know if the state statute's going to even speak to that. So if it doesn't speak to it, I would say you could. So if you wanted to say that in the downtown, you can't have a unit that's greater than 2 bedrooms, let's say, I would think you could probably do that.
Yeah, I think it would be important for us to try and minimize the impact on, we want to create affordable housing that we need, which is senior housing, which I don't think we need 4-bedroom senior.
Now, the other thing is, if you're talking about a 15-unit development, you really would need to limit it to no more than 1 or 2 bedrooms. I think otherwise the size of the building itself is going to not be, not work in the downtown area. So, you're kind of constrained by that aspect of it, so that, a mixture is what you're looking for.
Yeah, so I'm actually thinking more in that scenario that I presented before, 5 units on a 10,000 square foot lot. Well, somebody could come in and build 5 townhouses, 4 bedrooms. That's really not the affordable housing we're trying. Don't get me wrong, I think we need affordable housing for families, but we have a lot of affordable housing units in town. We're over the 10%. I think that the Affordable Housing Trust has identified areas of need for affordable housing, which is senior housing and so-called gap housing for younger professionals that can't afford.
Right, which are not going to be the 4-bedroom.
Which I think is
You're
the one and
looking
two,
at the 1 and 2, yeah.
1 and 2 bedroom,
Sure.
600 to 900 square foot units that we, would be more apartment style downtown living than the subdivision neighborhood living that we see a lot of in town. There's a lot of questions to it. What's our next step, though, Jim?
I think your next step is to get a copy of the regulations. So as soon as they're promulgated, send it to you electronically.
Yeah.
So you can take a look at it and get familiar with what the state is requiring at a minimum, and then look at our existing transit-oriented zoning, and look at our downtown planning overlay district, and see if we could modify the downtown planning overlay district with regard to the housing component, and bring it up to the standard of the state. And then if you feel that that works, then you propose to the state that we be allowed to have it in our downtown.
Okay. I think there's other things might want to incorporate in that, some sustainability concepts. If there's new construction downtown of an apartment building, I'd want them to, if there's parking, I'd want them to have car charging stations or, bike stations. There's a lot of things we need to think about.
So this is time-bound. Once the regulations are adopted, we'll have 1.5 years to comply. So for towns that don't have any zoning next to their train station that deals with affordable housing, I don't know if Grafton has it or not, they're going to have to create a brand-new bylaw. If, for example, we can't agree, or if the sewer apportionment and the comprehensive wastewater management study doesn't yield new sewer capacity specifically for the downtown, then I think we amend our existing zoning to comply with the minimum of what the state wants. And we fall back then in the future to coming around to getting what we want. So we may have to, in the short term, comply with what the state wants at the train station, and on our own track, on our own timeline, create the zoning we want for the downtown, because that's going to be hamstrung by our ability to deliver sewer.
Jim, can I just ask a question? The Grafton train station on Route 30, essentially, across the street from it now is going up. A developer has bought the piece of property across what used to be Pine Street, or now whatever it is, and is going to put in, I understand, a significant amount of housing in there. Are they going to be affected by this rule?
I don't know what their current zoning is in that location, so they will be affected by it.
Yeah.
But maybe their zoning may already comply with that.
I'm just wondering, because it's the only train station in Grafton, and so it's sort of interesting to see how they're dealing with that, because if this new regulation is coming through, how that's going to affect them.
We could reach out to their planner and find out.
Yeah,
but
particularly with that new buildings.
all communities are going to have to comply with that.
Okay. I would be curious to know. I was just trying to find more about that project. I could look that up.
Yeah, I haven't seen much about it.
I remember reading an article about it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a mixed use with stores also, commercial and residential.
Let's see if Jim can get some more information out of the Grafton town planner, and I can do some research online too. All right. Do we have any more questions on this? I think Jim's right. There's too many questions on it at this point. We need to get the regulations and try and focus our microscope on those. So I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is a continued public hearing for the amendment to special permit TOV 2014-1 Village Commons, 1 Gleason Street, discussions on water line and completion of landscaping for units being occupied over the winter. Jim, do you want to just summarize where we're at on this, and we can get an update from Farouk?
And I'm recusing myself from this.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
Yes, so as you know, we had opened a public hearing on this last month to consider the transit-oriented village known as Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street, and asked the developer if he would bring a water line from his dead-end water line to the abutting property at Westborough Village, and the board in exchange would consider deferring the commercial building indefinitely at the discretion of the property owner for development. I know that Mr. Ansari has completed the water line on his property and brought it to the property line of the abutter at Westborough Village. The town engineer worked with him to cap the line in an appropriate way with a valve that was suitable to the town and allow the abutter to connect at their discretion. We requested that Mr. Ansari reach out to the abutting property and get an answer from them if they were going to connect while he was there doing the work. They did not give him an answer on time. I don't know what the current status of that is. You do have Mr. Ansari online right now. I think this is an appropriate time for him to give you an update on that project.
Farouk, do you want to just introduce yourself again and then give us an update as to what progress, if anything's been made?
Yes, please. My name is Farouk Ansari, and I'm, manager of Village Commons LLC. We have completed the water line, like Jim articulated, and all the testing has been completed, and even the chlorination has been completed. So as of today, it's 100% complete. And all I got to do now is pave my asphalt driveway that was being held up because of this. So that work is done. I have not heard anything from our neighbors. I did get an email from them about maybe a week ago asking me a few more questions regarding the water line, and I gave them the answers, and they said, well, they're still looking into it, but they have not made any decision, at least to my knowledge. So the weather is kind of turning, as we all know. Pretty soon, I think it will not be conducive to be doing any digging because the frost is going to get in. So the time obviously is of a sense. Maybe we already crossed that line.
Okay, questions for Farouk?
I'm not on the water line, but what is the status of the commercial building at the moment? Is that been filled in around and finished? The exterior?
Yes, through the chairman, as soon as the planning board makes a decision to approve all of that, I'll just go ahead and backfill everything. We have to get rid of the fence and backfill everything and then grade it all out. So hopefully, if you guys can make the decision tonight, I'll jump on it and get that completed.
Yeah, but don't you have to do that no matter what? I mean, I don't think our decision from the planning board has any effect on whether you have to backfill around the commercial building or do along the fence line.
Hold on, I think we're talking about two things.
I know it.
Hazel's talking about the existing commercial building, right? Is that done? Not the pad site that you're going to have to backfill and turn into green space. Are we talking about two different things? Am I?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Farouk, the existing commercial building, is that done?
That is done to the point where we are ready to rent it out or sell it, whatever. Once we find a tenant, and then we will go ahead and complete the outside of it based on their requirements and in accordance with the approved plans. Right now, we have graded it all out. It is weather tight and it's in a good shape. I thought Hazel was talking about the foundation that we had dug for building number 2. I apologize. I misunderstood her.
Okay.
Jim, maybe you can give us an update of the inspections being completed on that?
So the existing commercial building, as you know, when the design review inspection was done, was incomplete. However, since that time, he has completed access. So you can, at grade, enter that building right now. It has a shell occupancy, is that correct, the building commissioner?
Yeah, Fred Leonardo. So we've issued a certificate of occupancy for the shell only for the commercial building, so it can't be occupied, but it met the requirement of the planning board. We've issued a certificate for the 7th unit, which was affordable, and I believe we've issued a certificate of occupancy for 2 additional market rates, either 1 or 2. I don't have that at the top of my head, but I know we've done at least 1 or 2 above the 7th for affordables. Beyond the affordable, sorry.
All right, because those obviously needed to be completed before the planning board looked at amending the special permit with regard to the water line. I mean, it all comes together. So thank you, that's what I was trying to find out. Because the backfilling on where the commercial pad is would be a condition of the change in the special permit.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, what other questions do we have? There was a question about the last affordable unit. That, was there a request from the applicant on that, or?
Just before we address that, and Fred's coming up, while Fred's coming up, we just granted an occupancy for unit number 11 at the site, and the landscaping was incomplete. I was concerned about making sure that we had security to guarantee the completion of that landscaping in the spring. Mr. Ansari has not requested a bond reduction, so we have the full amount of the bond in place, more than adequate security to complete the landscaping on that housing unit in the spring if we needed to. I know Mr. Ansari intends to complete the landscaping in the spring.
So, Fred, I think there was some emails from the applicant about that last affordable unit. I'm just trying to understand if there's something we're expected to act on today.
Well, so my understanding and the way I'm ready to proceed is that this discussion's gone on for actually a couple of years. And the board was, and myself included, were very adamant about the sequencing of the affordable units.
Right.
So the applicant, Mr. Ansari, had proposed to do, by the 7th occupancy, they'd do the first affordable, which he's done. By the 12th C of O, he would do the second. And by the 14th, or the second to the last, would be the third affordable. So the last unit, the 15th, would be a market rate. Mr. Ansari is now in front of you and asking you to allow him to do the 14th and 15th unit, which are the last 2, as the affordables. So he wants to complete the market rates before the last 2 affordables are built. That's my understanding is what he's requesting of the board.
But I thought the whole point of it was that, and the way this was set up, that he had to complete the affordables in a sequence before he completed the commercial, so that we would make sure that the affordables got done and had their COs and were ready to go to auction. Is that not correct?
I don't understand the justification or the rationale for moving those affordables to the end.
I have none. That's the applicant that's asking that. I wouldn't support that.
Jim, did you have a comment?
I was going to say that the way the project is approved is it requires a phasing schedule.
Yeah.
And the phasing schedule that you had requires that all the affordables receive an occupancy. That doesn't mean they're owned by someone yet. It just means they're suitable to receive occupancy prior to the last market rate unit receiving occupancy. So he has a total of 3 affordable units. The first one has already received occupancy. There are 2 more to be built and receive occupancy prior to the last market rate unit. That's the way it stands currently.
Well, I would just like to say 2 things on this. First of all, the original discussion that the board had with the applicant made no mention of moving the affordable units to the end. It was purely about consideration of the second commercial unit in exchange, in exchange, I guess, for completing that water loop to the extent that he could. So introducing a new change to the special permit seems inappropriate to me. He can certainly ask, but the one thing I want to point out, and we have Zara Gardens on our agenda, but at Zara Gardens, the last market rate unit closed in December of 2020, and we didn't have authority over that project, but the two affordable units in there, the only two affordable units, were at the end, and those didn't close till September of 21, so 9 months after the last market rate unit. And to be honest with you, the second to last market rate unit was April of 20, so you're talking a year and a half after most of that project is built.
I thought that the affordable units, one of them still hadn't closed.
Are there 3 units there, affordable units? So that may be true.
Yes, they actually finished one of the affordables earlier on, but the last 2 were done as the last 2 units.
And in fact, as I look at this, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 of those buildings were finished in 2018. So the affordable units weren't done until 3 years later, after 8 of the 8 buildings. That's not, to me, the point of, so I won't support this change. I'm fine with the change to the commercial component.
Right, to waive the commercial requirement for building the commercial unit.
Yeah.
But I certainly would not approve moving the affordable units to the end of this. I think we should keep with the schedule as it was originally set
I want to
up.
move them up. So let's not introduce that change either. All right.
Can I say something, Chairman?
Farouk, absolutely, you can say something. Go ahead.
Okay. I think there seems to be a confusion here. All I was saying was, my market rate units are done, plus the 2 affordables that are left over. In about another month and a half, they'd be enough complete that you can move in as soon as we get past the DHCD. Now, the town took a very long time to approve the documents that they have received from the DHCD. We don't even have the DHCD approval. So for me to say to hold off on a market rate unit because, the other 2 units are not ready to be occupied, how much sense does that make? I mean, those market rate units are already being built. I mean, the affordables, they are in the process. In another month, you'll have both the frames up, and the interior done. So all I'm saying is these guys have bought these units ahead of time and they're ready to move in. I mean, there's absolutely, why are we delaying this? It's not like I'm, dragging my feet to build those.
Yeah, Farouk, when you say why are we delaying this was a requirement from the get-go, right? So you chose to put all your effort into the market rate units and didn't consider the impact of the affordable units on your schedule. And to me, you should have put as much attention on the affordable units from the get-go as you did on the market rate units. I think personally you deprioritized those because they were not income-making for you. But I really don't care about your motivation for that. I just care that you get those affordable units done. The lottery has nothing to do with getting those done. You can finish those. You can get occupancies permits and then hold the lottery a year later, right? So don't blame the paperwork. It's the construction that needs to be done.
And Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Tim.
they just need to be completed. They need a certificate of occupancy. The applicant is saying occupied. We're not asking for them to be occupied. We're asking for the work to be done, the units to be ready to go out through that process.
So all right. That's 100%.
You have a deal.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so just for clarification, we know there's a CO on one of the affordable units, but not on the other 2. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, so he has 2 more units that must be done before he can complete the sale of the regular units.
Well, I would go so far as to say that before the 12th unit, the next affordable should be done, And by the 14th, which would be the second to last, the third unit should be done. So the last unit in the whole complex would be the last market rate.
Yeah, I think the intent, and I was on the board then, the intent was to make sure that those affordables were done and to use that last unit as incentive
Right.
for the developer to finish the project and not.
So are we still looking at the schedule which we have in front of us, which says that the affordable unit number 2
This,
was to be completed before the 14th and 3 before the 15th? I thought originally it was earlier than that.
yeah, this is a proposed schedule that Farouk gave us.
Thank you.
Where I think we can disregard this and then go back to the original, to the previous schedule that we got, which.
That's what I was,
So, all right, procedurally, this is a, Farouk, did you have another comment? I'm sorry, I can't see you,
Yes,
so.
I did. I'm really not trying to, you know what I mean, incite anything here. All I'm saying is, would you be willing to take a look at this in another month and a half again, when all the units are done? And then the 12 may be just sitting there, the market rate unit, just because it is not the 15th unit. Would you then be willing to allow me to get rid of that, because the other 2 would be all ready too? So they're all going together, you know? I'm not delaying anything.
Farouk, so if all the units are done in a month or 2, then you'll have occupancy permits on all the units, and this whole discussion will be moot, right? So
Right, I may
that's all
not
you
have
need to
the
do is
occupancy permit.
get
It'll be
those to
very
the
close to
stage
that.
where you can apply and receive an occupancy permit.
I mean, I'll be awfully
So I don't
close to that.
understand
I mean,
like what you're asking us to do, Farouk. Are you asking us to continue the public hearing for another month?
No.
Okay. I mean, we can do that. I just find it, you know, if you're going to finish the units, then finish the units. And that's all you need to do to get your, occupancy on all of the market rate units and all of the affordables. That's the entire point of why we structured it that way, Farouk, was to make sure that you finished the affordable units and didn't delay those for unforeseen circumstances that, such as DHCD or town delays or any of that stuff. I don't really understand what that has to do with your ability to get occupancy.
Well, okay, well, there was no condition like that in the decision though, but just so you know. There was no such condition like that.
Well, all right, that is a different argument and not what's before us today, but I believe, so I guess we're procedurally, Jim, we,
Well, you have a public hearing open to amend the special permit to allow the developer to defer the completion of the second commercial building at his discretion in exchange for his completing the water line from the end of his current approved water line to the property line at Westborough Village, and he has done that.
so that's all that's on the agenda tonight, essentially, is that amendment to the special permit. Has nothing to do with the affordable, the units.
That's correct.
Completion of the units, so.
That's correct.
I mean, I would think we could move forward with that particular approval because he has completed the water line. And so.
well,
we
he
can-
hasn't he's completed it to the extent that he can, but if.
Right.
I'm curious to see what, again, it's a big homeowners association next door. They may be contemplating moving that forward, and, I'm curious, I don't know how long we give them to respond to this.
I mean, essentially, have we reached the end of the building season for the second commercial building anyway? I mean, in other words, it essentially is now impossible to begin to complete the second commercial building or to even really work on it because I don't think the foundation's in, so.
Well, yeah, but the issue is he can't get his final occupancy on the residential until that second one is built, right?
That's the way the original decision was written.
The whole point is he wants to finish the residential and sell them before, otherwise he has to hold one back until after, for what, take him a year to build a commercial building?
Well, I would think, we really then at this point should just hold open the public hearing and wait and see for a month and see what happens. And maybe Farouk, maybe you'll have finished all the rest of the buildings, and that'll take care of the whole problem. And we'll also know the status of the neighbors on the water line.
Well, through the chairman again, I have completed my task 100%. And I have to backfill that open foundation. So holding out the decision until I finish the meeting makes absolutely no sense, because that could take another 6 months to finish those units, depending on the weather conditions. And I still tell you that if they come back, I mean, I'm talking about the neighbors, if they're okay and they allow me to do that, I'm still willing to do that based on my agreement with them. So to hold off this decision, I've done my part. You know, you gave me a task and I agreed to it without even anything. I completed it. So I think I would expect
not make any sense out of it. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, we've encouraged this water line as much as we can. We can't make the decision for the neighbors that
That's fine.
they'll have the ability to finish that water loop at their own expense. I don't necessarily, I think the applicants acted in good faith on his end, and I think we should move the
No, I agree on that.
just move this and
So we
close
could
it.
close the public hearing and then ask that Jim draft the change in the permit
the
for
amendment to the
approval next
special
time.
permit.
Then I'd make a motion to do that.
All right, well, first, before we do, it is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody on Zoom? Any emails from the public on this? Okay, seeing none, if you want to make a motion to.
All right, so I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for amendment to the special permit, TOV number 2014-1, Village Commons, 1 Gleason Street.
Before we, I'll second it, but procedurally, do we need 4 votes on this?
You need 4 votes to amend the permit. I don't know that you need 4 votes to close the public hearing.
I would think.
I would say to be safe, you probably should. I'm not an attorney. Do you happen to know, Fred?
So I don't think we
Yeah, I would
close it
say.
until we are.
Okay, so we can do both of them next
Just,
meeting.
I don't want there to be a question that we did something in violation of.
And there's no benefit to closing the public hearing before you have a decision anyway.
Okay.
So you need to defeat that motion or withdraw the motion, one or the
All
other.
right, so I'll withdraw the motion to close the public hearing for amendment special permit, TOV 214.1, Village Commons, 1 Gleason Street.
There you go.
And
But
I'm
can
fine
we-
with that withdrawal, and I think we just leave it open until next meeting.
But can we instruct Jim to prepare?
Yes.
Yep. So Jim.
That's all I would say.
And the amendment only involves the water line in trade for the commercial
Commercial
building.
building, right.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, we do need to reference the water line and
Oh, yeah, don't
revise
worry.
plan to that, but we don't need
Right.
to reference.
And the closing of
neighbors.
the foundation hole and the stabilization and landscaping of the
Right.
property.
Okay.
And
So-
there's clarity on the rest of the conditions of the special permit that are remaining untouched.
They all remain in place.
In
They come
place and
forward in full
untouched,
force
so-
and effect.
All right. So Farouk, we'll get a draft decision for you. I'll make a motion to continue the special permit amendment on TOV 2014-1 to our next meeting on December 21st at 6:30.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion of that motion? All those in favor? That's 3-0. I'm sorry, we should do a roll call because it's a Zoom. Hazel Nurse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That's 3-0 in favor of continuing this public hearing to our next meeting. And Jim will instruct you to prepare a draft special permit to circulate to the applicant and to the board for consideration. Okay.
Thank you, yes.
All right. Farouk, since you're here, we had asked also for an update on Zara Gardens, which is I've already mentioned that project. I was over there the other day, and the road is not completed. There's raised manhole covers, there's no curb, there's curbing on site, but not installed. The fact that people have been living there since 2018, 3 years without with a substandard road bothers me, and I'd just like to know what you're doing to fix that and complete the project.
Okay, as you know, that was approved under the ZBA. It had nothing to do with the planning board. I don't know if you know that or not. So I'm still going to answer your question, but it's really not a planning board thing. But since you asked me the question, we are ready to paving, and the trees are the only things that are left after the curbing is installed. I had already got the curbing delivered. The curbing people are so busy, they just cannot seem to find the time to come out and do it. It's only going to take them maybe a day and a half to 2 days to do the entire curbing. So the trees will be done next year, and the final paving will be done next year, just to give you an update. But it was done on the ZBA.
So I get back to my point earlier. You closed 8 houses in that project in 2018.
Right.
I don't understand how, I realize it's a ZBA project, but you need to bring that road up to town standards.
Yes.
And the idea that it's going to be next year just seems inadequate to me. I don't know what recourse we have on that, Jim.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be able to plow the road because the structures are raised. So Farouk, you're going to be responsible for plowing that road in the wintertime. Generally, the town doesn't allow you to raise structures until you're ready to receive final course of paving. I assume that you have collars around your structures so that any plow or machinery can move up over them. But it's very difficult to plow a road if the structures are raised.
Yes, I've been maintaining the road the last 2-3 years, so there's no problem doing that. It's all under control. So I am going to be one plowing.
How long have the structures been raised?
The structures have not been raised yet. The one that were a little bit higher, we have donuts around. So.
Can we bring this up with ZBA? I mean, since they have the authority over this, or?
I can send them a memo and copy the board.
I don't know what authority we have to,
We don't.
well, make a recommendation to ZBA on this, but all right. Thank you for the update, Farouk. I'm going to move past this because I'm really not sure what else to say, and I'll probably say something that I'll regret later. So next item on the agenda is a discussion and possible vote of support for the Community Preservation Act. Pete, I'll give you a second. Thank you, Farouk. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You too.
All right, so as you know, I'm representing the Planning Board on the Community Preservation Exploratory Committee. And the committee has decided and voted on a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And they've asked that I present that to the Planning Board to see if the board would be willing to vote in support of that recommendation. I can summarize that for you, and I don't want to get too into the details of the Community Preservation Act because we could be here a long time, but the Community Preservation Act is basically a surcharge on people's taxes. That surcharge can range from 0.5% to 3%. The committee had targeted a surcharge of about $50 on the average tax bill. With that in mind, we're recommending that the surcharge be 0.5%, which was the lowest percent. We're also recommending that the first $100,000 in value be exempt from that surcharge, so that would reduce the burden on the taxpayer a little more.
Did they also, for seniors or something, were there some further abatements?
Yeah, there's also a low income
Right.
exemption.
Yeah.
That can be applied for, granted, so that you wouldn't have to pay that surcharge at all if you qualify. The estimated revenue to the town, based on last year's numbers, would be approximately just under $400,000. That includes last year's match from the state, which was about 40% of the town's contribution. So whatever money went into this fund, we'd be getting a 40% return on from the state. This is actually money. So this fund is, that the state created is money that comes from charges at the Registry of Deeds. So it's money that many Westborough residents have already paid into the state fund and historically have not gotten anything back because we're not. I'd like the board to support it. I don't know what else. There are three things that this can be spent on: historic preservation, open space and recreation, and affordable housing. Given the open space fund is down to virtually zero, the Housing Trust needs funds in order to create more affordable housing, and there's multiple of historic buildings in town that could benefit from this. I think it's a good fund for us to, I look at it as a savings account, trying to plan ahead.
Would you like a motion, Mark?
Yeah. Again,
Okay.
I'd
I
like
just
to
have
give
a
you a
question first.
chance to ask questions.
Yeah. Who has governance? What town authority governs the
So
disbursement of?
There'll be a new community preservation committee created that people can apply to. The actual expense has to go to town meeting. So if somebody comes in and says, I want to spend X amount of dollars from the CPC, Community Preservation Act Fund, the new CPC, it's called, or Community Preservation Committee, would have to, they'd apply to that committee, and then that committee would make a recommendation, and it would go on the town warrant. The town meeting would have to actually approve that expenditure.
And the warrant would include this proposal of 0.5% in the,
well,
at that level.
The 0.5% has to go to town meeting. If it passes at town meeting, it then goes on to the ballot, and it has to
be voted on.
Has to pass a referendum at the ballot, and then it becomes, then the town would create that committee and create the fund.
Okay.
So I think the hope, wasn't it the hope that they could, at this town meeting, they'd pass 0.5%, and then it could go on the ballot in November?
Yeah, the target would be this November because it's a governor's election. It would have a bigger turnout than an election that was just a local election. Like as many people as possible to have a say in what the town does here. Obviously, a presidential election would have even a bigger turnout, but that's a ways off, and we didn't want to lose. We feel like we're behind. Almost every town in the area adopted this 10 years ago. Shrewsbury just adopted it, but I think Grafton, Hopkinton, Upton have had it for years.
Northborough, they've all had it, yeah.
Generated a substantial amount of revenue out of it.
Hopkinton just built a dog park.
Right.
With it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can't do with it, but there's a lot of good things we can do with it. And one of the things the committee did was look at projects in the past that we could have used this money
The town hall, the Forbes building.
Let's say the town hall, the town voted to spend the money on town hall. Even if we had had a 500,000 in the CPA or the million, some towns got over $1 million in their CPA fund. We could have put that towards the expense of town hall and defrayed the cost of the appropriation to the taxpayers at that point. So I just think it makes sense for us to try and get, again, it's money that is going to be spent on things that the town would vote for anyway, because the town meeting has to vote to approve the expense.
So again, a vote to support by the planning board is a vote to support the proposal on the warrant article, so that when it comes up on the warrant article, there's a vote of the planning board in support of it.
Yeah, for the 0.5%.
So we would probably.
Whatever.
Yeah, so we would probably vote again on the warrant article. This would be a vote just in support of the recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen will have to make a decision about whether.
Right, but we're saying, please put it on the warrant.
There was actually quite a few people who asked us why, shouldn't we be going for more? And we just felt like we needed to take a conservative approach, given some of the prospective tax increases and recent tax increases. Want to make.
But you have to stay at that percentage for 5 years before you can change it.
Yeah, we do recognize that. And certainly in 5 years, if there's a sentiment to increase it, then that's fine. But I think to take this approach would have the least impact, but still generate.
Somebody could amend it on town meeting floor.
Somebody could.
The percentage could
I
amend it
suppose they could,
to look for a vote to support a higher rate.
I think they could. That would be up to the town moderator, though, whether they.
I think we're just missing out currently, and I think we should take the conservative approach of doing a half. I think we should, to start, and we're behind other towns, surrounding towns, so I think we're missing out right now. So I think the conservative approach makes sense. So I'm on board.
All right. Well, I will make a motion then to ask Jim, or to instruct Jim to write a letter of support for the CPA recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, roll call again. Pete?
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That's 4-0 in favor of supporting that.
So Mark, can you send me an email with some of the talking points so that I can write this letter, and I'm writing it to the Board of Selectmen, correct?
Right, and I'll, with my signature for the board.
Okay. Yeah, send me a couple talking points.
Yeah, I actually can send you the executive summary. We just have couple of sections that we're still fine tuning. I don't think it's on the selectmen's agenda.
Yeah, I just want to be able to point out the value of the CPA going forward, what it can be used for.
I'll get you the nitty gritty, and you can ask me for more if you need it. Okay? All right. Any other business?
Ones I just sent today were the 16th, but we also had the November 9th.
Okay, we have minutes from November 9th and November 16th. Have you all had a chance to read those and offer any edits?
Ever the 9th, I think, is it the 16th, yeah.
All right, do you want to wait on the minutes?
Yeah, I'd like to wait.
Okay, let's wait on the minutes till next meeting, because Jim Ball may have some comments as well.
And I
and
just
I
need
don't-
everyone to sign this before you leave the decision.
Does it make a difference if
All
it's
right.
blue or black?
Jim, is there anything else?
No further business, thank you.
Okay. All right, so I will make a motion then to adjourn.
I second that.
And future meeting dates, look at the format, what is on the
What was the
agenda?
discussion of format for future meetings?
That had to do with how we were going to continue to proceed in hybrid form or in person or only virtual.
All right, so I made a motion and Pete seconded, so we have to act on that motion, unfortunately, which was to adjourn.
We
I'm
discussed.
going to withdraw that motion then, so we can discuss future meetings. I think as long as we're masking, we should continue to do the hybrid meeting.
And I made that recommendation to you informally, yeah.
And I think that the masking requirement is currently only scheduled through January. Not, maybe only one or two more meetings, then we can reassess. So I'd like to continue with the hybrid meetings, and I will hopefully get an answer on whether I have to read that Zoom link into the record. All right, so I don't think we need to vote on that. I think that's, we got a consensus and we'll continue that way. So now I will make my motion to adjourn.
And I'll second it again.
Okay, any discussion? We'll do a roll call. Tim, how do you?
Yes, to adjourn.
Pete?
Yes.
Hazel?
Night.
Yes, adjourn.
And I vote yes as well. That's 4-0 in favor of adjournment.
So my question is, fire tower, when we went to